Okay, welcome to the Product Leader Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Andrew Lawlor, who's a business development manager at IBT Online. So, how you doing today, Andrew?
Good, Bob. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, doing well today here in the cloudy and rainy Grand Rapids, Michigan.
You mentioned that you have a snowstorm coming. Uh, I guess it's just wishful thinking with that golf hat on there.
Yeah, definitely would much rather be out in the golf course right now, but it's you got to expect it at some point after being in Michigan for so long. At springtime, you're going to get a snowstorm and a blizzard. Absolutely.
Okay, right on. Well, let's jump right in. I wanted to bring you on because I was really impressed when I first learned about IBT Online that there was a whole side to international e-commerce that I really hadn't considered. And one of the biggest ideas that popped out to me right away was the idea of website localization. And I imagine there's a lot of listeners and business owners that are unfamiliar with this, as I was. So I would love for you to just jump in with kind of helping us understand what is that, and is it important, and when is it important?
Yeah, I think that's a good starting point. Website localization, it really is a mammoth of a topic, and I'll try to kind of condense it into bite-sized pieces. But it is really a big emphasis for a lot of companies, a lot of exporters right now in terms of reaching their international audiences. But localization as a whole is creating, it's taking your American website that you have for the U.S. audience and internationalizing it for your international audiences, your international markets. And so, some of the things that go behind that, some of the best practices behind localization, creating an entire new website, business development website with a new domain name, new keywords for that market with cultural nuances, obviously the lingual nuances that first comes to mind, metrics, currencies, hosting the website. It's creating exactly what you have representational of the U.S. audience for your Mexican audience, for your Canadian audience. So it's something that is becoming increasingly more important because of how expansive the online world has become now.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. That's something I've never really considered. Um, One question I bet a lot of people would be asking at this point is, can they just install that Google Translate plugin on their website, and would that be sufficient?
Yeah. I mean, it certainly is a good question. It's a question that we get a lot for the company I work with, and a Google plugin is a lot of times in the minds of consumers and business users. To them it might seem like it cuts it. You're creating a Spanish version of the website, but and that's all it is. It really is. It's just creating a Spanish version. It's only translations, but in the big picture, localization and being best practice, it takes a lot more than translations and just throwing a plugin on the website. The really the big separator, I would say, between a Google Translator plugin and creating a best practice localization site to attract that audience is is how that website, the new website, responds to different search engines. So, of course, here in the U.S., we have Google.com. That's our main search engine that we connect with whenever we have a question or we have a new product or service on mind that we want to search up. Google.com. In Canada, they use Google.ca, or in the UK, Google.co.uk. And so, really, the main differentiator is having a personal website that communicates to those individual search engines. And certainly a Google Translator plugin just doesn't have the capabilities to do that, and speak to all these different search engines and all these different markets that you're looking to reach.
Okay, so basically, you're not going to rank as well in a foreign country with a .com website.
Yeah. I mean, certainly. So, you're going to get some traffic. Regardless if you have a Google Translate plugin or a localized site, you're going to get maybe 5 people from South Africa that found your website and were interested in learning more. But yeah, really the best practice way is to connect with that entire audience, and so that you are popping up as number one, on their search results and most relevant for that user.
Mm-hmm. I just had a thought. I'm curious. Do you know how a localized website does it make a difference when it comes to running ads in that country? Like if I was running Google ads or Facebook ads, does that matter? Or
Yeah, well, it is, and it's also a very separate, I guess, process because when it comes to creating a Google ad, it's you're paying for it. You know, you're paying to have a spot that comes up on Google that's not necessarily taking it to a website. Um, so a Google ad is something that you put up on Facebook, and it's for certain keywords, and as long as they plug in those keywords, that ad's going to pop up.
mm-hmm.
And it's for Google.com specifically, or the Canadian Google, etc. So it is separate, but it's also when somebody clicks on the ad, they'd like to go to their in-market website. So
Mm,
for example, if you made a Google ad for the Chilean market in Chile, they'd like to see a Chilean website, the .cl domain name, instead of going to an English.com. So they are separate, but certainly they're right there, and they affect each other in that way.
okay. You mentioned Chile, and I actually lived a couple of years in Mexico, and I live in Florida now. So when I speak Spanish with people, they often they laugh and tell me I don't speak Spanish, I speak Mexican, right? and and that's pretty much true. But would you like would you do use different language, different terminology on even within, let's say, English websites or Spanish websites in different countries? Would that be taken into account?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the top export markets when you look at the U.S., it's Canada and Mexico, and even further than Mexico, it's Latin America, and especially for people who are in Florida or South Coast part of the United States, Mexico and Latin America are the biggest markets. Um, and there's so many nuances. It's funny you bring up Mexico, and even I've got some heritage from Chile. My mom was born there, and so she speaks a completely different language than her friends that were born in Mexico, and she talks about exactly that, all the time. There are a lot of nuances. I know just off the top of my head. For example, in Mexico, they for the word car, they use the word auto.
Mm-hmm.
And in Spain, they use the word coche. And if you were in Spain in market and you said the word auto, they would have no idea what you're talking about.
Oh, really?
They would have no idea. So it's certainly definitely it's to the nuance of the market. It's to the nuance of the word. Um, yeah, and I mean, it could be make or break on whether you really connect and engage with that audience or not, for whatever product or service you have to show.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. That makes a ton of sense. Yeah, I didn't know that about Spain, that they wouldn't necessarily follow you if you're trying to say car. You say auto, they wouldn't know. Um, so I guess that probably comes into play a lot with different products. When you're trying to sell a product on a website, the verbiage that you use is probably pretty critical.
The verbiage is key. Yeah, verbiage is key, and that's something. To one of your earlier questions, Bob, you were saying Google Translate. Google Translate provides a very blanket Spanish translation, across the board, but it's not going to pick up on those nuances. And so, the real differentiator is doing research and in market research and understanding the culture behind it. If you don't have the culture, if you speak to a Mexican consumer like you would um, an Argentinian consumer, they're going to get two completely new, different ideas than one another.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes a ton of sense. Okay, interesting. So, I guess my next question is, I mean, that can seem a little overwhelming. Installing a Google Translate plugin, I could do that, in an afternoon, no problem. Um, but to try to build an entirely different site based on my US site, making sure that I am using the correct verbiage of the local country or what have you. I mean, how would I even get started at doing something like that? It seems like a huge undertaking.
I mean, it certainly takes a lot of time when you localize a website. It's creating a whole new website with everything that you have on your U.S. website, but to another audience. For some for some, massive corporations, they could have thousands of pages. Just taking the example of Apple, for example, they have 165 different localized websites that they have for each and every market and country that they're selling Apple products in. And, if you scroll through the Apple website and the hundreds of different products they have now, they have to do that individually and localize for those markets. So it's a very time consuming, process and project. But it also just kind of depends on where you're at in your buying process. It's, if you are just starting off a startup that's just started the company and looking to sell to U.S. domestic, retailers, sell to the consumers themselves, that should be the main priority and focus on building that. Once you get to a point where you have different resources, you have a marketing department that can support the building of the website or support a contracted website builder for you, it might not be the best idea to have that localization. And sometimes something like a Google Translate could suffice to the point where you need to be to resource that localization.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so depending on where your business is and what your goals are, it depends on how much it makes sense to invest into something like this, essentially.
Yeah, certainly on your goals. Not to say, we speak to a lot of different companies from one man band startup, within the last year to, multi-million-dollar corporations. And not to say that if you want to put the time and put the effort into your international markets and you see, millions of dollars out in the world, America as a whole, 300 million, 330 million people, and there's an additional 7 billion people out there that might be looking for that same product. So, it certainly is a global world, and there's nothing wrong with having international aspirations. But if you're willing to put the effort in and the same amount of marketing effort or one-to-one sales effort as you do in the U.S. market as to the Mexican market or the Canadian market, absolutely, it's a great investment and of your time, of your resources, and of course investing into that.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. All right, so here's a bit of an interesting question for you. Do you think that virtual trade shows are a good opportunity when you're looking at international exporting more, or is there something else that would make more sense to focus on?
Yeah, it's a really good question when you talk about trade shows because of the traditional importance of trade shows and trade missions. Um, and really localization, the reason I guess we're having this conversation is because trade shows, trade missions, the traditional route to market has kind of vanished. And localization has been one of those options that have come out from all of this that we're going through. Virtual trade shows have also, arisen to the cause alongside localization. And so I've had the opportunity to go to a couple of virtual trade shows, and I will say that it's a completely different experience. And it's really an experience that it is what you make of it. You don't have that person-to-person interaction where you get to shake somebody's hand, give them a business card, give them a flyer that maybe they'll look at while they're eating lunch later that day. The virtual experience in a trade show is very much hopping from room to room. Maybe you'll hit the chat button and speak to a representative. But a lot of times the engagement just isn't there because you can just find everything on their website and only be selective to who you want to speak with. Rather at a trade show or a trade mission, you're going to be bouncing around and people are going to be, roping you into the conversation, just about anywhere you're at in the conference. So yeah, virtual trade shows are an interesting topic, and I think they're only going to get better from here. But as of right now, we haven't seen too much opportunity with it yet. And maybe for some of the viewers watching that have had attended virtual trade shows can understand the difficulties of trying to really engage with somebody as opposed to the traditional trade show that we see. But yeah, just on that same note, website localization has become that trade show option, that opportunity to connect with those buyers, or those those in-market partners that you're trying to have a conversation with, and really connect the dots in a way that wasn't possible beforehand, and just the actual regular trade shows, that the opportunities that provided.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I've seen a lot of virtual trade shows advertised, and I haven't attended any, but it's made me wonder. I mean, what is it even? I mean, what's the experience of a virtual trade show? Do you go to a website and basically sort of look through a catalog of the vendors and click on one and then chat? I guess there's chat opportunities if you're interested. I don't know. What is it? Is that the experience or?
Yeah, it's pretty much I've had the opportunity to go to two different trade shows, virtual trade shows now, um, and they're each to the organization. Really, there's no I guess set structure because of how new they are. Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's easy to go through this growing phase, but really it's having the speakers. You have a conference room where you have a virtual audience, and you can add comments, and all watch in synchronicity to this live performance, or to this live conference. And on the other side, typically what you have is these at a trade show, you have these booths that you can bounce back and forth between. What I've seen is basically different pages. So it is like a website that you go to. There's a category for a list of different companies that are exhibiting at the show. You can bounce to the booth. They'll probably have 4 or 5 different flyers for you, links to their website, and a chat box. And really, you don't get that engagement. And a lot of times, people will just take the information, not engage with you whatsoever, even though they might be interested. Um, and it's tough to connect with the people that are interested, or might not even have any idea who you are yet. So you don't get the opportunity to explain yourself, in just a chat box where you really rely on them to take the initiative there.
That's so strange. I mean, I just can't imagine that. And you're right. They're new and they're going to get better, but to me that seems tough. I mean, conferences I've been to, it's you find the people that you kind of feel like you can support you can support them. You go to lunch with them, you do whatever, and you're able to make good connections. But that seems challenging. So, all right. So let's say hypothetically, I'm an e-commerce business owner, and I'm looking for distribution in Europe or wherever. Um, would like a localized website or a better online presence in that country, or I don't know, can you ever use that to target distributors over there or to make connections, or what's a good way to do that?
Yeah, I mean, focus on e-commerce or focus on the distributor side of.
Well, focus on the distributor side in this situation, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of creating localization for recruiting new distributors, I mean, that's exactly what website localization would be. If you're, say, you're a company that um, manufactures stuffed animals, for example, and you're looking for a partner to distribute your stuffed animals that has all the materials. When those distributors are looking for buyers or sellers like yourself, they're going to be looking on their own search engine and looking for different landing pages to connect with the company. And so if they type in a Spanish Mexican search engine, um, uh, people who sell teddy bears, they're not going to find your company because you don't have that localized website and you have just a U.S. American site. So, best practice really tells you to create that localized site, but also create localized web pages that say, "Hey, we're here in the market to find new distributors to sell our product, to promote our product, to be a partner of ours. This is exactly the requirements and standards that we're looking for." And it's in exactly the context that they're looking for. When the consumer comes to the website, the distributor comes to the website, they understand it completely, understand the guidelines, and can start building that relationship from the get go.
Mm-hmm.
It's also interesting, not only can you just contact the distributor through different forms on the website, but it's also necessary to, in some stages, to have a resource in the shape of somebody who speaks that language. If it's a Portuguese distributor and you have nobody in the company who speaks Portuguese, it's kind of tough to make that connection. On the other hand, websites can help you, have that conversation online. There isn't too much awkward interaction or not knowing where you want to go. You have it clearly written out what you want, and if they reach out to you, you know that they're interested and you can proceed.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So just out of curiosity, do you guys work with more manufacturers that are kind of going that route, or more direct to consumer companies? What's kind of your focus?
Yeah, the company that I work with, we primarily, I would say about 80% of our client base is our companies that are in the B2B sphere. The other 20% are made up of business to consumer, and then also companies that are looking for governmental agencies, B2G side. And so that's only 20% that are kind of business to consumer. And that's just what we've seen as a trend, I guess, from manufacturers that are used to trade shows and trade missions. And so they look to other options.
Mm-hmm.
Not to say that B2C, it's just as effective. If you create an entire e-commerce website that they're able to, select pounds, it's, right next door, they have a distributor there. That's perfect world for them, for any B2C. But yeah, manufacturers has been probably our number one audience that has been looking for that localization because of the lack of other opportunities for international growth that they're used to. That have been tradition, year on year for them.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, makes sense. All right. So here's an interesting question that I've always felt like I understand it from the shipping side and understand the different things that go into it. But what are some other things people should focus on when they're trying to pick a target market internationally? What are some things that they should think about when they're looking at, hey, I want to export more? Which market should I look at?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it's really dependent on your products, your services, and what's feasible for you. If you're a business to consumer company and getting your manufactured product that you manufacture in Florida, sometimes it's just not possible and profitable enough to transport that product all the way to somebody in China. Whereas Mexico is right there, you can easily distribute there, or Canada is right above. And so sometimes distribution comes into play, which I know, Bob, you could probably speak a little bit to for transportation. The other things are, opportunities in market. If you're selling teddy bears and China just never buys teddy bears, that's just not a market that you really want to focus on. But if Canada, they love teddy bears, you're going to want to sell more to that market. So in saying that, research is key. And there's really nobody who's going to be able to tell you, the company owner, which market's best besides yourself, because you know your market, you know your niche, your industry, and you know what's going to be helpful in research. Now, to say there's plenty and plenty of organizations in the U.S., which I encourage everybody that's in the business world to reach out to if you're not already. Economic development organizations around the U.S. Just an example, I'm here in Michigan, and the Economic Development Organization here is called MEDC. So they work hand in hand with companies that are, one-man bands to huge corporations, of creating an export plan, of creating market research opportunities. If they want to learn more about how teddy bears are selling in India, they can create that plan for you if you don't want to do it yourself. So every state has one, whether it's the Department of Commerce for your state. They have grants that are available. And of course, they're there to help you as a business owner, as a marketing strategic officer in the company that wants to learn more about different markets. But really, in all, it comes down to what your own objectives, what your own goals are, and how the market reflects that.
Okay, those are some great tips because a lot of times small businesses maybe they don't know how or don't have the resources to do market analysis and to do that research. And so that's a good tip to kind of look into. I know that um, I've had customers that have worked with the U.S. Department of Commerce as well to get some connections and some help with some market research. Yeah, it's really critical. Okay, so are there businesses out there? I know we kind of talked about this earlier with the goals, right? Based on the business's goals, it depends on, or that'll kind of determine how much they should invest in maybe, for example, website localization, whether it should be just the plugin for now, or maybe it should be, a full blown new site. But are there companies that maybe come to you and say, "Hey, listen, we're interested in website localization. Can you guys help us?" And you can kind of tell they're not ready yet, or maybe they should wait a little bit and build it up. You know, I guess I'm asking, what at what point are they ready, or maybe they should, wait a little bit.
Yeah, it really comes down to, companies that can make the most out of a localized website. Of course, there, with any company, you have your own buyer persona. You have the company that's ideally going to be responsible for making some positive changes from the service, from the products that you provide to them. In our instance, it's really the companies that, we focus on companies that are and see the most productivity from the companies that are kind of within the small to medium size range.
Okay.
Um, when it comes to a company, we know that it's just one person running the entire show. They've been around for maybe a year, a couple months, but they have ambitions to grow in China and Germany and these other markets. If you have a website that you create out for China and Germany and it's unattended, it's almost going to reflect negatively on your business. You if there's a German user that comes to the website, they see it hasn't been updated in 2 years. They're not going to see you as a global leader. They're going to see you as oh well, he tried, and there's really nobody attending to this, and there's nobody speaking to me because I'm trying to reach out to these forums and there's nobody there. So
Yeah.
through experience, we've kind of seen like it does take a bit of resource in the shape of human resource and also financial to have systems to support those markets. When you go into Germany and France, they're going to expect you to have a full workforce behind that. So I mean, it might just take a marketing coordinator to be behind that and focused on that. An international strategy leader to be monitoring some of the interactions. A sales force, or sometimes it works to have a distributor in market that wants to grab a hold of that website and use that for sales purposes. So that's also another way. So a lot of times I'll run into a one person company that doesn't have the necessary internal resources, but if they have a distributor there that's willing to put in the work, that is completely viable for them, and it's going to work because they have an entire company that's focused on selling that product. And hey, here's a website to help support their sales, which in the end supports you. Um, so it really does come down to resources, and after you have the resources, it just depends how many localized websites you want for how many markets. Like Apple, they're very extreme. They're at the top of their game for what they do, and they have 160 different localized websites. And so
Right.
that's kind of the best practice that companies should be shooting for. But it all takes time, and I think it's a practice that'll become more prominent in years to come because really only in the past, Bob, like you were saying, localization wasn't even top of your mind, didn't know what it was necessarily. Me 2 years ago, I had no idea what it was, or how effective it is. And I think as we become more online or more hybrid online and in person, it's going to be a lot more effective, and people are going to look to Google and say, maybe I do need 160 localized websites, for
Mm-hmm.
all of my top markets. So yeah, that's really what it takes.
Yeah. And something to think about, in the US, SEO is saturated. search engine optimization is saturated. When you create a new website for a product, there's probably thousands of other websites that sell that product here that you're going to have to try to rank against, and hopefully you can rank on the first page and that sort of thing. And I don't know how common this is, but at least with my customers, I find that oftentimes there's hidden international markets that have a demand for their product, and there's almost no way for those countries to get that product locally. And so there's a huge demand there for their product, and they basically are the only game in town when they make themselves available. And so sometimes, I think these companies would be surprised if they get these localized sites. They could probably rank faster in many markets and get on the first page of Google or whatever the search engine is a lot quicker than they can here.
I mean, you bring up a lot of good points there, and I mean, we're a very feedback driven company, so we always want to talk to our clients after the fact and see how they respond to it and what's working, what's not. A lot of times, what happens for companies that are just learning about localization who didn't know and ended up going through with the process, a lot of times it's an absolute, it's a mind blowing experience for them because of the amount of traffic. They're actually ranking in Saudi Arabia in their top market, and they're actually getting hundreds of results per week or per month to their website in terms of traffic and people clicking on different links. And something they probably, just looking at their US analytics, you're like, oh, how do I grow Saudi Arabian traffic? Well, this is the way. And it's kind of, once you see those results, it's like, wow, this is how you connect with those individual audiences. But yeah, I mean, you bring up like search engines and the importance of that and staying consistent with it, because things like Google, they want the most relevant search results for their users. And the way that Google's algorithm, you can read online all about their algorithm and what they take into account when somebody searches up teddy bears or for whatever product. But staying relevant, of course, with the different keywords, but also the amount of time and effort that's put into the website. If it's a website that has been touched in 2 years, there's no way in heck that they're going to be coming up as number one on that search result. There's no
Right.
way. They're going to prioritize the companies that put time into those markets, that put time into that industry with new blogs, new resources, new products, and just regular updates. So that just kind of further emphasizes the importance of having the resources to support that website ongoing and continually.
Yeah, that makes sense. So what I'm hearing is, it's important to be engaged in the markets where you want to sell into, right?
Yeah. I mean, just the markets that you want to sell into, that you are selling into. There's a lot of companies that come to us that are, selling selling in different international markets, and they usually have business trips, 5-10 times a year to go connect with different customers. And so now they want to have a website presence that does the same job, doesn't cost an airline ticket. It's a one-time fee to build these websites, keep them running, obviously, but it's a different way. And there's a lot of different niches, a lot of different businesses that are now opening their eyes to the importance of that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm curious if you talk to a new company, maybe someone who's looking to work with you guys, and they're wanting to enter whatever market it may be. How does IBT Online help them to get seen in that market or enter it more successfully?
Yeah. I mean, just touching on my company a bit, IBT Online, I guess a very top level digital marketing firm, and we're here to build the websites for you in different, international markets. So we do website localization. Um, and going back to something that, because there's an important factor when it comes to the resources that you need, human resources, financial resources, we as a company, we not only build these companies, but we want to point you in the right direction of economic development organizations across the US. So the neat part about IBT Online is that we have a lot of partnerships and work alongside these economic development corporations for financial purposes. There are grants out there. One that's widely known across the nation is a STEP grant. The STEP grant, many of you might know, is used for trade missions, trade shows, and maybe international expenses. But what is also under that STEP grant allocation is website localization. So what we do is we are here to build website localized sites for you, business development to your goals, to your objectives, international marketing aside from that. But there's also grants that are federally backed for you to reimburse these programs to grow your exports, because these partners are there to help support your business, really. So hope that answers the question.
Yeah. So basically, you help companies build localized websites in their market of choice, but you also have relationships with organizations that can help them either with grants to help fund, pay for part or all of that localized site, but also those you have. I know you have relationships with which you mentioned, with organizations that can help them with the market research and with those types of things too. So they're making sure to make decisions based on data, and it just increases the chances of it being successful.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, everything's data driven. Everybody is looking for the numbers that's going to help support them. And there's nothing better than, having a couple of different organizations that do the work for you in the shape of market research analysis. What's the best market for your industry? And of course, once you have that in mind, and website localization is feasible for your company, we're here to assist and help you build those websites, and build social media programs, search engine marketing programs, Google ads in these different markets. So yeah, there's a lot going on, and I think there's a lot of benefit to working with IBT, another contractor, taking the work off your hands. You don't have to hire an in company developer to build these websites and spend many months. It's a very feasible option that's state backed.
Okay. So for those listeners out there who have a business, whether it be manufacturer or their e-commerce or whatever it is, and they are curious to learn more to see if it'd be a fit to have a localized website built for them, what's the best way to reach out to you and schedule a conversation, or whatever the best way to do that is?
Yeah, I'd love to get in contact with you, learn more, start a conversation if you feel like this is kind of where your business is at. My email is, and maybe I'm sure we can add it to the comments and notes section, but al@ibt.onl is my email. Find me on LinkedIn. I'm always active on there, posting new resources, and happy to talk more. Andrew Lawlor, working with IBT Online. I think it's Andrew-Lawlor-marketing is the post URL there. So I guess those are two of the best ways to get in contact with me, and love to start that conversation.
Awesome. Yeah. So we'll definitely put your email in the show notes on the website, productleaderpodcast.com. And we'll definitely put it up on the screen as well. So I appreciate your time, Andrew, today. Did you have any final thoughts for us?
No, I mean, it was an absolute pleasure to be on the show. I'm happy to speak more to it, be a resource. I pride myself in being a digital marketeer, so anything related to that, I'm happy to help out with. But again, thanks to you, Bob, and appreciate you for having me here.
No, it was an absolute pleasure, and hopefully we can have you on again in the future. But again, thank you for your time, and have a great day.
Awesome. Thank you.
Bye.